Balky. Great. With 4 commissioners, we can call this meeting to order. Today is October 5th. If we can go around the neighborhood and introduce ourselves, starting with 1C01, Commissioner Balky.
Thanks very much. Just in time. I represent the southwest corner of ANC 1C. District 01 basically runs from the Hilton over to 18th and then north from Florida up to Wyoming and some small blocks just north of Columbia Road. So thanks much. Back to you.
Hi, Peter Wood. I'm 1C03. Commissioner Fauschini is not here, so I will say at the left side of the 4-chambered heart of Adams Morgan, 18th, 19th, Biltmore to Wyoming.
Hi, Megan Faulkner, Commissioner for 1C04, which is the northwest corner of the neighborhood around Walter Pierce Park.
My name is Fiona Clem. I serve 1C08 in the southeast corner of Adams Morgan. So I'm trying to. First thing on the agenda is introduction of commissioners, which we just did. The chair's report. I don't have a report tonight. Secretary's report. Commissioner Fauschini is not here tonight. Treasurer, do you have a report?
Yes. So for our bank account is currently $6,195. I also have a quarterly financial report and budget for review and approval at this meeting, which I can share on my screen right now. It's our budget for 2023 fiscal year, which began on October 1st.
Are you sharing it as the treasurer or a treasurer's report, or do you need to add that to the agenda?
I think I need to add that to the agenda. I think I had requested that. And I think in the past, sometimes I can present it now and then I can add it to the agenda for voting later. However,
we need to add it to the agenda at the beginning of the meeting in order to approve the agenda for the meeting. So are you saying you'd like to make a motion to add the budget for 2023 to the agenda tonight?
Yes, I would like to make that motion.
I will second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor of adding that to the agenda, please say aye.
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 Okay, so that motion passes. So now we're back to the treasurer's report.
So the treasurer, I guess if we're going to, can I also make a motion to add the quarterly financial report to the agenda?
Yes.
I will second
Somebody
that.
second that? Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
All those in favor of adding that to the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, well, that passes. So, so those agenda items will have to go to the end of the meeting. I will add them to the meeting now. Okay, so the agenda is it's final as posted. And so back to the treasurer's report.
So I don't have anything for the report since we'll be addressing those later. I had one other item that I had emailed requesting and asking about adding to the agenda that I hadn't heard back. So I don't know if now is the time to address that since I think we didn't vote to approve the agenda at the beginning.
You want to add another thing to the agenda tonight?
Yes, I had emailed and asking because we had gotten notice after our planning, zoning, and transportation meeting about the extension of the comment period on the Columbia Road bus priority lane. And I had emailed previously to ask about potentially adding that. And so I'd like to request to add that to the agenda for consideration as it was circulated to commissioners for review.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of adding that to the agenda, please say aye.
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 Okay, so that's on the agenda. What are we considering?
So it's a resolution in about the Columbia Road bus priority plan, the concept that DDOT had presented at July's PZT meeting. Previously, the comment period, the deadline was before I'm happy to, I can put a link in the chat, but the comment period was extended. And so we now have an opportunity to consider a resolution when previously it was before our meeting.
Okay, great. Does that finalize the agenda? Okay, so do you have a treasurer's report?
The treasurer's report is just that we have $6,195 in our bank account. We have not received an additional allotment in our bank account, but we did receive approval or we received notification that we will be receiving one soon. So I hope by next meeting, we will have that money in our bank account. And I'll have a more fuller, I can share the quarterly financial report and the budget when we get to that at the end of the meeting, at the end of the agenda. But those, that is where we stand currently.
Okay, great. Commissioners' announcements and commissioner and committee agendas. If you are the committee chair, please announce the agenda and the time of your meeting. Going around the neighborhood, starting with Commissioner Buckley.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to mention briefly, I saw that DDOT is now assessing every bridge in the District of Columbia to see if they should add barriers to prevent suicides. And that's a direct outgrowth of the good work of Dr. Van Toff, who was with us when we approved our resolution, and our neighbors to the north approved their resolution, both addressing the situation with the Taft Bridge. So I'm also glad to see that the DC Preservation League is working with Dr. Van Toff on all this, and just wanted to report that occasionally we do have a positive impact. I'm glad to see that. Yield back to the chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Wood.
Thanks. I mean, just briefly, one second, that I've had a lot of constituents and just residents talk about how that's something that they're really proud of that's moving forward. So yeah, good work, everyone. Not to be too self-congratulatory, but so Alcoholic Beverage Control and Public Safety Committee will be meeting as always next Wednesday, October 12th at 7 p.m. We have, I think, the same exact type of agenda as every month this year. We have a few straggling renewals of licenses that we're considering, and I think one new license for an internet cafe, if I'm not mistaken, maybe two. But we'll have a police officer there, and looking forward to it. And as far as 1C03 news goes, the main thing I'm excited about, which is, it has been a very long process in the making, and we're very close to seeing actual work done, is the 1800 blocks of Calhoun in Wyoming. There's a notice of intent, which is an NOI that is out to have the construction potentially start as soon as November. So I'm excited to see both those blocks become, at least very tentatively, if not permanently, one ways in opposite directions to fit in with the grid of the other streets, which would be Vernon, California, and Belmont, with speed bumps installed and contraflow bike lanes. I think that might be the most popular issue I've had constituents talk to me about in the last 2 years, maybe with the exception of 18th Street becoming a pedestrian zone. So hopefully those two things, in the event that there is a pedestrian zone more permanently, work together well. I know it's the thing that's been on a lot of people's minds, which is, if we're going to do things that are important for pedestrian safety and traffic safety, how do those different projects like Columbia, like Colorado, Wyoming, like 18th Street all work together? So really thank you for everyone that continues to be patient and I guess just level-headed as we discuss those things. Also some community art stuff. I'll stop talking. But again, thank you to everyone that's been really proactive and getting things done the last few months.
So I don't have any significant announcements, except to just note that there is a sinkhole that has opened up near the pedestrian path in Walter Pierce Park. So it's a little closer to the fence line, so people aren't likely to walk right into it, but just mentioning that, since it's grown really quickly and it may grow bigger. I've already reached out to DGS about it, but just mentioning that. And then the PZT committee will be meeting 2 weeks from today on the 19th at 7 p.m. There's currently nothing on the agenda. I expect to add a resolution about the vacant building at 2920 Ontario at the sort of urging of neighbors, that will be about asking the district to take action on this blighted building in the neighborhood, but that hasn't yet been added. And that's the only thing on the agenda so far.
Thanks. I don't have any updates from 1C08. The next on the agenda is Brittany Bunch, Outreach Specialist from the District of Columbia Sentencing Commission. Hi, Brittany. Thank you for being here to share information about DC Sentencing Commission.
Thank you so much, commissioners, for the opportunity to be here and speak to the community. I don't know if you can see me, I can't see myself, but I'm also joined by the commission's attorney advisor, Megan Buckley. I would love for her to be brought up. She'll be here to answer some of the community's questions in regards to the application of the voluntary sentencing guidelines. And I just wanted to show a brief slide, so I would need a little permission to share my screen.
Hold on,
That should-
Brittany, we're gonna
Yep.
promote.
No worries.
This meeting is being recorded.
Awesome. Here I go. Thank you. And the attorney advisor, her name is Megan Buckley. So she may still be in the attendee list.
Yep, she's coming now.
All right, perfect. She's my, I would say that I'm Robin in this case, but she's the real rock star. Okay, and I'm going to share my screen now. Thank you so much. Okay. So is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's perfect. So again, thank you so much, commissioners, for the opportunity to present. Hello, community members. My name is Brittany Bunch, and I'm the outreach specialist with the DC Sentencing Commission. And I'm joined by the commission's lovely attorney advisor, Megan Buckley, who is here to answer questions towards the end of the presentation. Today, we will be providing just a brief look at the DC voluntary sentencing guidelines, as well as a synopsis in regards to who we are, as well as share some of our felony sentencing data from our 2021 annual report. And there will be an opportunity at the end of this presentation where I will make sure that you have access to our publications as well as our email list. So just our mission of the DC Sentencing Commission is to implement, monitor, as well as support the district's voluntary sentencing guidelines. We also strive to promote fair and consistent sentencing policies and practices. And we do look to increase the public's understanding of sentencing policies and practices in the district. And we do evaluate the effectiveness of the guideline system in order to make changes that are based on actual sentencing and corrections practice and research. So we are composed of about 17 members, 12 that are voting and 5 that are non-voting, that represent both federal and district-based entities in the district, such as the United States Attorney's Office in DC. We have representation from DC Superior Court, as well as non-voting representation from Metropolitan Police Department. And we do have 7 staff members that support the daily operations of the commission. So this is just a brief snapshot of some of our mandates as well as our duties. So we do provide felony sentencing policy recommendation to the council. We monitor the application of our DC voluntary sentencing guidelines through metrics called compliance, and we'll get a little bit into that. We do a wealth of felony sentencing research focused in on the district, and we do take requests in regards to that data from the public, from government officials, as well as academic entities. And we do outreach and educations through events such as this and trainings in our social media platforms. So this is just a snapshot of what the voluntary sentencing guidelines are comprised of. There are other components of our physical manual that assist judges with sentencing as well. But on June 14, 2004, DC Superior Courts began imposing sentences under the DC voluntary sentencing guidelines for all felony offenses. And the guidelines recommend the length of sentence to impose as well as the type. The guidelines impose sentences that take in consideration the severity of the offense, which you can see listed out from the most severe to least severe on our y-axis. And then the criminal history of the individual being sentenced, as you can see the metrics for that towards the x-axis. as well as other factors that take into consideration in regards to the case. We do have a full video, like a series of videos that go a little bit more into depth in regards to our history, as well as how judges use these grids and come up with sentences. And I'll provide a link to our new YouTube channel for that as well. So here, I know in our previous slides where I discussed mandates and duties, we do monitor the application of our guidelines. And one way we look at that is through compliance, measuring what a compliant sentence is. So what is a compliant guideline sentence? So for one, the sentence is within the in-the-box range. So as we see here on the screen, given the severity of the offense and the criminal history score that the person falls in, if the recommended sentence falls within that in-the-box range, then that would be an in-the-box compliant sentence. Now, as I mentioned before, no sentence or no case is the same. I probably didn't mention that, sorry, not enough espresso. But no case is the same. So we do an in-depth analysis to determine if other factors make the sentence compliant. Now with these two metrics, we have a 91.4% in-the-box judicial compliance rate, and we have a 98.5% overall judicial compliance rate. So here we're just going to get into a few of our 2021 annual report facts. Now, this is not the sum total of the facts that report houses. It's a lot of interesting facts such as papering rates in the district and more demographic information. But as you see here, this data was collected between January 1, 2021 and December 31st, 2021, and the impact of COVID-19 should be taken into consideration when making any comparisons between 2020 and 2021 data in the previous years, a tongue twister. So we're looking here at felony sentences by year over a 10-year span. And as you see, there is an increase from 2020 to 2021 due to the courts returning to more in-person work. However, there is still a backlog on felony sentences, so numbers are still not matching our pre-pandemic numbers. In this graph, we're looking at the amount of felony sentences for violent and non-violent offenses at a count level over a 10-year span. And as we see, weapon, property, and other offenses are the most sentenced, followed by homicide, sex, and violent offenses. And you can see in the green, the drug offenses follow at last. In this graph here, we're looking at the sentences imposed by age group at a case level in 2021. As we see, individuals aged 22 to 30 represent the largest age group being sentenced for felonies in the district, followed by age groups 18 to 21. So we are doing a big push to engage with the community and really educate the community into who we are, as well as how felony sentencing works in the district. So we do have monthly commission meetings where our commission members come together every third Tuesday of the month to discuss sentencing policy in the district. It is open to the public, and I'll provide a link in the chat box as well. If you would like to sign up or view some of our previous meetings, I'll put that in for you. We're also doing a big push on engaging with practicing DC attorneys in the district. So if you're a practicing attorney and you have questions in regards to our recent 2021 guideline changes or out of district scoring, every second Wednesday of the month at 1 p.m., the commission will be hosting commission office hours, where our lovely, again, attorney advisor, Megan Buckley, is there to answer questions face-to-face, as we see in the new world, in a virtual setting. So we'll provide our information for everyone that is interested, or for you to spread the word in regards to that. Again, we do have a new YouTube channel where we have those 4 videos. Our most recent video does a deep dive into the DC felony sentencing process step by step. And we encourage everyone to learn more and watch that. Lastly, we do have about 3 publications. Our spring summer newsletter came out, and it just gives a synopsis of what the commission has been up to over the past 6 months. So I encourage everyone to engage with that. And we do have 2 new publications called issue papers. One of the issue papers does a comprehensive analysis of the factors that motivate Superior Court judges to impose sentences that are above and or below the specified guidelines range that we recommend. So that would be an interesting read, as well as we have another issue paper that analyzes the impact of our 2021 guideline manual changes on felony sentencing in the district. So I'll provide links for that as well. So we are always here to support. If you have questions, we're always one call away. You can send us an email at that email address there. We will both always be there to assist and or answer questions. And you can check out our website for our recent publications. And we do encourage you to follow us on our social media accounts so that you can be in the know. Again, thank you so much, commissioners, for the opportunity to engage. Thank you, community members, for listening. And now we're going to open up the floor for questions. So thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. Commissioner Wood.
All right, thanks. That was really informative. Thank you for sharing all that. I have one kind of general question, and answer it however long or however you want. You don't have to take too long. But I mean, there's obviously a lot of opinions on the role of sentencing and how it should be implemented, particularly during election years. I think those opinions come out pretty quickly. Just from your professional perspective, either of you, are there any kind of misnomers or misleading claims that you see that are really common that from your side of work actually don't accurately represent how sentencing works, what it's intended to do, anything like that? Like, are there any kind of public disclaimers that you think are worthwhile for us to share when constituents approach us about whatever type of sentencing related issue?
That's a good question. I think, and Brittany, I think, probably interacts with people in the general public more, so I'll also defer to any answer she has. I tend to get a lot more of the practitioner questions, so my answer might be a little bit more skewed, but I think that there can be just questions if the guidelines themselves are voluntary. Judges are only required to give a legal sentence. I think there are questions they apply to juveniles. They're really only to adult felony sentences. I think that there's, especially with just kind of the law and order impact is kind of what I call it. A lot of information on just sentencing in general is based on television or what you see in the movies, and that's not always accurate for a lot of different reasons. What you would see in the courtroom is not always going to be the most exciting thing to sit and watch for an hour. So not to say that it's not and has a huge impact, and I'm not trying to, what it can be a terrible thing in a lot of people's lives, so I don't want to minimize that either. But just writing motions and different things like that. So there's a lot that goes into kind of the minutia of just the criminal system in terms of that. So I don't know, Brittany, if you have a different answer. I used to be a trial attorney too, so I think my view is a little bit skewed.
Yeah, I would say the same, but also just there is a thought that we're part of the U.S. Sentencing Commission, or I've heard that it's all one sentencing structure. Each state jurisdiction has its own sentencing policies and practices. We're just focused in on local DC laws, well, felony laws at that. We also get a lot of questions. I don't know how familiar everyone is with the proposed passage of the RCCA. Megan's looking at me because I have to make sure I say this right. So we get a lot of confusion with the agency that is currently leading that process. And we currently can't necessarily speak on that at the moment until, after the fact. So that would be two things. Aside from how voluntary the guidelines are, again, we are here to set the framework. And again, like I said before, every case is different. So the judge is not bound to using the guidelines. It's just a metrics to assist them, through.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for presenting.
No problem. Any way that we can support, or if there's any updates that you would like for us to have, we do quarterly reports and things of those nature. So I'll ensure that I keep everyone on the call abreast to that. When we have our upcoming 2022 annual report, even though I don't want to talk about that right now, my head is hurting a little bit. I will be sure to come back and do a little presentation in regards to that. We do take, if you wanted any felony sentencing data, that is also one of our mandates as well.
Thank you, Brittany. We also have a question. I'm hearing feedback. I don't know if everybody else is. Oh, okay. I don't know what just happened, but I'm not hearing feedback now. Brittany, there was a question in the chat. Can you explain the difference between voluntary and regular judge sentencing, please?
So I can take that one. So a judge is only required to give a legal sentence. So if there's a mandatory minimum, must follow that. The statutes, the laws that the DC Council has put into place gives usually some sort of maximum penalty. So the judge must just follow kind of what the law puts into place. They can't give a life sentence, for example, for a case that has a 10-year maximum penalty, for example, to kind of give a huge hypothetical. The voluntary guidelines are exactly what the name is. They're voluntary. They can't account for every situation, which I think Brittany did a great job of emphasizing, but they're meant to kind of give a middle ground for the typical cases. Now, every case is different. The guidelines really can't account for every factual scenario, but to really hone in from going from very extremes to the top extremes, when defendants have similar criminal history backgrounds, committed similar offenses, and try to find a middle ground. And then the range is take into account the different kind of facts, different other pieces of information. And then if called for, there's also the mitigating and aggravating departures. So we try to account for as much as we can, but then ultimately it's up to the judge to say, this is a case that really the guidelines can't account for. They can't account for everything. We definitely are not expecting 100% compliance, because there's just no way to account for everything. So we are not looking for 100% compliance, but that's really the difference is defendant couldn't, for example, appeal because the guidelines were not followed in their case. They're ultimately up to the judge. We are encouraged that we have such high compliance in the district that their judges seem to find that this is working, that these are reasonable sentences to be giving. But ultimately it's their choice, their wisdom, what they're seeing, that they're receiving the information and the facts out there.
Thank you. And that looks like you've covered all of our questions. So I really want to thank you for your time, and I appreciate the presentation. Brittany, thank you for showing up, and Megan, thank you for your information. Doesn't look like there are any other questions from commissioners or attendees. So thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Thank you so much. Again, if there's any way that we can support, we're here.
Thank you so much for having us.
The next item on the agenda is public announcements. Please try to keep your announcements to 2 minutes a person. If you would like to make a public announcement, feel free to raise your hand, and Gordon will promote you. Thanks. Looks like Kristen Barden.
All right, great. Let's see. Hang on. Takes a second to join as a panelist.
Mhm.
Sorry about that. So, hi everyone. I'm Kristen Barden. I'm the executive director of the Adams Morgan Partnership. Many of you know me. I have a few great things to tell you about events coming up in October and also in November as we get ready for the holiday season. So we have one more drag queen story time. This is in partnership with the DC Public Library and also the Line Hotel. Those are on the last Sunday of the month. So we have one more on October 30th. They're in Unity Park at 11 o'clock. And we have a variety of really great drag queens. Some of them are public educators and do both song and dance and reading stories. So, and the library always brings their really cool book bike mobile. It's like super cool. And it like folds out and kids can check out books and it's really fun. So again, that's the last Sunday of October at 11. And that'll be the last one for the season. It gets too cold after once we get into November, but we'll bring it back in the spring, probably April, I'm thinking. And it's a really great partnership with the library and the Line Hotel. Porch Fest, as many of you know, was postponed from last Saturday because of the weather. But we do have a new date, Saturday, October 15th. So not this Saturday, but the coming Saturday, again, from 2 to 6. So, and we're checking to make sure that we still have the 17 porches and the 60 or 70 bands. There was a lot. So, yeah, so that's going to be a great event again. So please check out, we'll publish a schedule and map and all of that as we get closer. Then on October 29th, on Saturday the 29th, we'll have the Apple Festival again with the farmers market. And we have all of the entries for the pie baking contest filled already. We capped that off at 16 because the judges can just only eat so much pie. And it's kind of, we'd love to expand, like, you know, the amount of pie and or the number of bakers making pie, but we are kind of constrained by, you know, people's stomachs. So yeah, it's a tough job. But I think Deb Falsenthal has volunteered to be a judge this year. So yeah, I don't think she's here tonight, but anyhow, so thanks, Deb, for doing that. And so all of 16 spots were filled within 5 minutes of when the entries went live. So we were really surprised. So, and we have a waiting list. So if anybody drops out, we can fill those quickly. Let's see, it'll be in the same location as last year on the front steps and sidewalk area of the hotel. And this year, we always choose a different charity to receive the contributions from the pie sales. So the bakers all make 3 pies. One is for judging, and then the other 2 we slice up and sell those slices, and for $5 each. So the charity this year will be Miriam's Kitchen. They have been a great partner with us in outreach to vulnerable people in Adams Morgan, both people experiencing homelessness and other people that are, you know, brinkering on, you know, the edge of homelessness. So Miriam's has been a great partner, and so we're gonna they'll be the recipient of the money from the pie sales this year. So, and we're still confirming some judges. Tom Sherwood is going to come back, and An Yang from News Channel 4, and the chief chef from Miriam's Kitchen will also be a judge. So Chef Marcus, I think is his name. So it's a fun event. So that's again Saturday the 29th, and the heirloom apple tasting starts around 10. And then the pie judging starts around 11. Okay, the last pedestrian zone for the fall will be on Sunday, the 23rd of October. This is going to be a Halloween preview. So we're going to encourage businesses to decorate early. And then we've got a bunch of Halloween programming that we're adding in to the other regular programming that we did for the last 2. There's going to be a pet costume contest. at about 5 o'clock. So if you have a pet and your pet will wear a costume, you might consider entering that contest. You can just show up and enter. You don't have to sign up ahead of time. That'll be at about 5. We're going to have a fashion show this year that's curated by our good friend Rocoy from, hang on, the name of her company. Studio Couture. So there's 4 Adams Morgan retailers that are participating, maybe more. And that fashion show is going to happen about 2 o'clock. And we'll have the magician come back again, and face painting and balloon animals. We're going to have a flash mob again with some Halloween themed music. So that will be a lot of fun. So the pedestrian zone is from noon to 10 again on the 23rd. So, oh, and I almost forgot the DC Arts Center that's on 18th Street. They're going to be doing a big draw event, DRAW. This is a national thing that they're participating in, where they encourage people to just all come out and draw. So we're going to set up some tables and chairs in some of the unused streetery space on the west side of 18th Street. And we'll lay out big sheets of paper, and they're going to bring acrylics and crayons and markers and anything, imaginable that you could use to draw. And people can just come and draw. So it's just sort of a fun way of exercising your creativity. So, there'll be more information coming out about that as well, but that'll be going on for most of the afternoon, I think, probably from noon until 4 or 5 p.m. So as soon as it starts to get dark, they'll probably wrap that up. So that's another part of the pedestrian zone. So, and then the advisory committee that many of you have participated in, many of the commissioners have participated in, is still meeting every Wednesday at noon. And one of the asks that we have of the committee is that we look at some dates for 2023 that we want to request now. So we can get those on the mayor's special events task group calendar, and we don't get bumped for other things that may come up. So, which was the case this past spring. So, so if you have some dates that you really think would be important, like Adams Morgan Day, please send those to us so that we can compile a list. And we want to do, a consistent, second weekend of the month or second Sunday of the month or whatever, so that it's predictable and people can plan on that. So if any of you have thoughts on that, please let me know. And then come November, we're going to be doing some more holiday decorating. We have ordered more decorations for the light poles, some more pole wraps and flitter decorations. So those will be coming in mid-November. We're also going to put the giant gift boxes back in the plaza near Truist Bank. Those are really popular for selfies. And then we're going to have some carolers come out probably 3 or 4 times during the holiday season, during the month of December. So, and then we're also going to do a social media contest where if you tag us with pictures that you take there, you'll be eligible to win a $50 gift card to your favorite Adams Morgan business. So, and we'll pull one winner each week during the month of December. So, and anyone can enter. So I think that's about it from me. And happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Kristen. That's a long list of great activities. Doesn't look like there are any questions.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, sure thing.
Doesn't look like there's any other raised hands from the community. Does anybody else have any public announcements? Okay, moving on to the consent agenda, which is just the meeting minutes from last month. All those in favor of passing the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions? Any nays? All right, welcome Commissioner Boots. So that is a 5-0, thank you. Moving on to the regular agenda, the ABC committee. The settlement was, a settlement agreement was created with Oh Mama Grill, the new which will Oh Mama Grill, which will take the Astor's place on Columbia Road. Is there any questions or discussions on that settlement agreement?
I'll just comment because I represented the ANC. It was very smooth. There are pretty much no points of contention except for how many days of trash pickup. So it was a nice process.
Any other questions or comments or discussion from the community? Okay, so all those in favor of supporting the settlement agreement for Oh Mama Grill, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay, so that passes 5-0. Moving on to Planning, Zoning and Transportation Committee, consideration of a letter of support for a future pedestrian zone. Commissioner Faulkner.
Yes, thank you. So this is a letter of support for future pedestrian zones similar to the two that have happened and the one that will be happening in just a few weeks, as Kristen mentioned, as well as making some suggestions to the DC government about possible modifications, including not having quite so many police with flashing lights blocking off the entrances and other things that we have heard from neighbors about feedback about the events. This is in part, we're considering a letter of support to the government and to the mayor and all the agencies involved, because it's not guaranteed that we'll get a set number of days next year or anything. I think that is my understanding, is that none of that is guaranteed yet. And so we want to show that there is support now that this has been piloted. We passed it unanimously out of the PZT committee. And I think that's all I have to present the resolution.
Are there any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Wood?
I have a kind of quick observation / question, maybe. I'm just looking at it, not an issue, but just maybe something that would be effective, is that the formatting is a little bit different than what we usually do. So it might be helpful to adjust it so it draws attention to specifically what we're requesting or urging. Maybe a friendly recommendation for some bullet points and something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think we can do some bullet points and like bolding. I think I wrote it like this because when we had written one previously, I think a few months ago, we wrote it as sort of a letter. So I sort of didn't do it in our exactly the same format, but that makes sense.
Probably not essential, but I do remember multiple offices have commented before that it's helpful for them for it to be clear what we're asking and what we're requesting.
Can you give a, Commissioner Wood, can you, or Commissioner Faulkner, can you show the friendly on the resolution before we vote on it? Or are these literally just bullet points? Nothing's changing, you're just saying.
And nothing to change the comment, just kind of just formatting, no actual content being changed.
Yeah, I can adjust them while we're talking, but it sounds like just the formatting to show probably the items at the end that have more specific requests.
Thank you. Commissioner Balaki?
Thanks very much. I just have a quick, hopefully friendly amendment. I would amend it to just strike that reference where we say we urge the district government to consider adding at least one more in 2022, since that's now a moot point. I know that was kind of in and out of earlier versions of this, but now it appears to be a dead letter. So I mean, the rest of it, continue monthly pedestrian zones beginning in early 2023, absolutely keep that, just that one phrase. Thanks.
So Commissioner Faulkner, what do you think about that friendly?
Yes, I'm happy to make that. I think we had taken it out and then added it back in when we heard different things. So yeah, happy to adjust that, since my understanding is that their October one will be the final one this year.
Okay. I have a friendly, that number 2, the number 2 after in the second paragraph after the word after should be spelled out. Are there any other comments or discussion points from commissioners? Are there any questions from the neighborhood, from the attendees or participants? please raise your hand if you have a question or type it in the chat. Okay, with no further discussion, I would like to see Commissioner Faulkner, you're just going to use formatting on that, and you're not changing any of the.
There we go. That's nice.
Okay.
Yes, I was just taking a second to figure out which items had specific requests and should be bullets and which were just stating the thing. But yes, just yes.
Okay, great. All right, so with that, and with no more discussion or questions from commissioners of the community, we can vote on this resolution renewing ANC support for pedestrian zone plans and urging continued pedestrian zones. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions? Any nays? With that passes 5-0. Moving on to the next letter of consideration, which is, oh, it's not a letter. The next item on the PZT portion of our agenda is the consideration of options for the plaza. This is the BB&T/Truist Plaza, which is really a DDOT plaza at the corner of 18th and Columbia Road. Commissioner Faulkner, do you want to review the options that we are considering? Is there a letter that we are?
There's not a letter because it's really just prioritizing 3 tree options to plant in the plaza. The layout of it is the same as it was when the PZT approved a plan last year. And as people may know, the crepe myrtle trees there died, I think because of some sort of, I think it was a bark disease or something. And in fact, DDOT is not getting any more crepe myrtle trees in the district right now. So that's why there's no letter. It's really just, I think all we'll need to do is send an email that says this is our preferred ranking of the 3 options. My understanding is that DDOT's preference is that we're open to that it's best if we're open to any of the 3, which I think they're apparently all 3 trees are already in the neighborhood. We learned at the PZT meeting that Commissioner Falaschini became an expert on trees during the pandemic with his kids. And so he knows where some of the similar trees are. So there is a link in the agenda to just some photos of the trees. At the PZT committee, the options that the order we discussed was the London plane tree first, the Chinese pistache second, and the thornless honey locust third. But that was just our recommendation, and I don't think there was any extremely strong opinions about that ranking.
Say that again. I'm just making notes because if we want to vote on that order, you said London plane was first option. What was the second option?
The Chinese pistache, and the third was the thornless honey locust.
And again, these are the PZT committee reviewed these, and they're making suggestions. We're not holding DDOT to do these necessarily. We're just saying we appreciate these trees, and if we can use these trees, that would be good.
Yes, well, and DDOT, these are the options DDOT provided. So it's really just ranking the options they provided. But yes, we're not holding them to them. And I think, they just want to sort of know what the community would prefer.
All right, great. Are there any, thank you for that information. Are there any questions from the commissioners?
Just really
Commissioner
quickly.
Wood.
Just really
Commissioner
quickly.
Wood.
Thank you. Yeah, just really quickly. I haven't paid enough attention to this. I apologize. So I might actually abstain just because I wanted to do more research. But have we had people that have training in this kind of science about what the best recommendations are beyond DDOT or even within DDOT? Just because I know that the last time we were recommended, I think, from a local organization in the neighborhood to get crepe myrtles, and then ended up not working.
Kristen from the bid may have a little bit more information, but my understanding is that these are the DDOT's recommendations of trees that do well in similar locations. There's several others throughout the neighborhood of these kinds. I can't remember which of the ones were exactly where. I think there's several London plane trees near on the Marie Reed Plaza. So I don't think we've heard from any outside groups, but I
was just curious.
yeah, the DDOT, I think these are all trees that are used really regularly throughout the city.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? Any questions or items for discussion from the community? Okay, so the motion on the table is to approve or support a suggestion for a London plane tree as option 1, the Chinese pistachio as option 2, and the thornless honey locust as option 3, and give these recommendations to DDOT and the bid, if I'm not mistaken. So that is, if I'm getting that motion correct. Okay, great. So that's the motion on the table. All those in favor of making these suggestions or approving these suggestions for the BB&T/Truist Plaza, please say aye.
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 Great. Any abstentions?
I'll abstain. I'm sorry.
Any nays? All right, that passes, but I said that in the wrong order. That passes. No, I think I said that in the right. No, I said it in the wrong order. So it's 5-0. I mean, 4-0 to 1. That's how that passes. All right, great. Moving on to the next item in the agenda. The PSC committee discussed a lot of things that are coming up for contracts. So Gordon Chafin is moving on from his role as digital meetings manager that he's been doing for several years now. And thank you, Gordon, for all of your hard work. And Sean Sullivan, who happens to live in the neighborhood, has stepped up to serve as the digital meeting manager. So the first item from the PSC committee is to consider a contract for Sean Sullivan. The contract is based on Gordon's contract. It essentially says it starts on October 1st, which obviously we're 4 days into the month, 5 days into the month. But it starts on October 1st and goes to September 30th of next year. It's based on all of the activity that Gordon provided and outlined in his renewal contract, as well as all of his activities. He and Sean met and discussed this, and Sean himself has agreed to sign it and has no questions. And so that is the contract that we were reviewing today that was passed out of the PSC committee last week, 2-0. Are there any questions from the commissioners about this contract?
Sorry.
Is that Commissioner Faulkner? Did you want to raise your hand?
Yeah,
okay.
sorry. I clicked and I thought it raised my hand and it didn't. I guess my only question about the contract is I don't have any concerns with it. Is just the monthly payment. I think with Gordon's contract, we paid half at one point and half at another point. I am obviously the treasurer currently. I will not be the treasurer after December, but I just wanted to raise, whether monthly payments are the preference, which I think is fine, but it's also just, more work in turning around the checks quickly. So I just wanted to, I guess my question is whether that was requested. And if so, I think that's fine. We write monthly checks for other things too, but just wanted to ask about that.
My understanding was that Gordon actually asked for the payment like because of other circumstances. So the original contract I thought was on a monthly basis. So I just went back to a monthly basis.
Got it.
Commissioner Wood?
Thanks. This is just a really, really minute observation, but sometimes ANC 1C doesn't have a space between the first C and the number 1. We would probably be consistent with that. That's all. So I guess recommending a friendly amendment to just add those spaces.
So where there are spaces, it's not referring to the entity 1C as in the beginning entity, as in like the party. It's like describing it. So like ANC 1C business as opposed to ANC 1C being the party of this contract. Technicality, but that's why there are spaces like ANC 1C's YouTube. It's a descriptor for YouTube as opposed to being a party of the contract.
I just meant like, for example, the first bullet point says for every month ANC 1C, 5 characters altogether. I mean, like I said, really, really my new observation. If there's some sort of underlying meaning I'm not aware of, I apologize, but just thought that.
Oh yeah, I know, I just explained it. Like
I
ANC 1C is the party of this contract. And that's mentioned in the first paragraph. The parties of the contract are ANC 1C and Sean Sullivan. And so ANC 1C, when it is 5 letters all mushed together, is the entity of the contract. Whereas when it's ANC, like it should have a space, but I see what you're saying and that's fine too. I mean, that's fine. I will take out all those spaces.
Oh, okay, that was the opposite of what I suggested. That's fine.
Any other questions from commissioners? Any questions from the community? Yep, let me just get rid of what I can find in here just to clear that up. All right, well, with that, then we will take a vote. The motion on the table is to pass the contract for Sean Sullivan's AV services starting October 1st, 2022 until September 30th, 2023. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, so that passes 5-0. With that, just as an aside, if Gordon and Sean can show themselves just so that we can meet Sean and thank Gordon. So Gordon, thank you very much for your service. It's been great. We still have a couple of other motions on the floor about your service, but I just wanted to say thank you very much. And I wanted the neighborhood to see Sean Sullivan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next item from the PSC meeting. It is a purchase of Zoom Pro. One of the things that Gordon has done over the last 2 years of the pandemic, but was let us use his Zoom Pro license. And so based on what he suggested, this is essentially just a consideration of a purchase of a Pro license that the ANC will have to use. And even if this can be purchased on a monthly basis and renewed so that if there are ever like hybrid meetings, like it doesn't have to be a year-long contract, but the year-long contract is $11.40 and will save money. So that's why I actually listed that out. So the motion is actually to purchase the plan for the year. So I'm more than happy to take a consideration for a monthly plan, but the Pro plan and outlined as it is, which is the meeting and the webinar and the cloud storage. Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Faulkner.
Thanks. So not, again, not a question, but a financial thing, which is just that I don't know that Zoom accepts check payments. So I think the way we will have to pay for this may be for a commissioner to unfortunately pay for it and then be reimbursed, which we can do quite quickly. But I just wanted to mention that we can obviously coordinate that offline, but there just may be some complications in figuring out how we do this. And also given that it is the yearly license is not cheap. So I just wanted to mention that since this is different than, one of our other contracts.
Thank you. One of the things that you can do is, or not you necessarily, but one of the things that organizations can do is make this a bill on their checking account. And and I've done that for other organizations that in this consideration.
Unfortunately, I don't think we can make any electronic payments. We have to have, every check has to be signed by 2 people for OANC regulations. So yeah, as far as I know, I can confirm, but last I knew there was no way for us to make electronic payments.
Okay, well, that's no big deal. I can purchase it and get reimbursed. That's fine, unless somebody else wants to do that. But because if this passes, hopefully it passes. If this passes, we need to purchase this immediately. Gordon, we are using Gordon's account today, and we're going to use Gordon's account for the ABC meeting next week. But then after that, we just have to move on, and because Gordon's actually going a little above and beyond his contract. Anyway, so we have to do this immediately this week. Will payment of $1,400 or $1,140 be a question, Treasurer Faulkner?
Sorry, could you just repeat the last thing you said?
We have money to cover $1,140 from our bank account this week.
Yes, this week we absolutely do. Yes.
Okay, that's, yeah. All right, so that clears up that. Are there any questions about this from the other commissioners? All right, and no other questions from commissioners. With discussion done, the motion on the table is to consider a purchase of the pro license for Zoom for ANC 1C. I want to put that in the title. All right, so with that, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Please say nay. Any abstentions? All right, so that motion passes 5-0. So the next motion on the table is payment for Sean Sullivan during September. So Sean, we had been looking for a digital meeting manager for most of the year. Gordon had very kindly given us an extended period of time in which to give us the information about the fact that he was moving on. And yeah, anyway, so Sean worked the month of September, and Gordon and Sean worked together so that Sean could get an understanding of how the meetings were run and Gordon's procedures. So what I'm asking the ANC to consider is a retroactive payment for September of 2022. So the specific consideration is payment before October 31st of 2022 for the month of September, but then the contract that we just passed obliges us to actually pay Sean his wages for the month of October also. But the contract actually stipulates 15 days. So anyway, but the obligation and this particular consideration is $500 for the month for September 2022. Does anybody have any questions about this consideration? Are there any questions from the attendees? All right, so with no more discussion, all those in favor of this consideration of payment for Sean Sullivan for the month of September for $500, please say aye.
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 Any nays, please say nay. Any abstentions? So thank you. This motion passes 5-0. The next consideration is payment for Gordon Chapin, whose contract ended on September 30th. And he has very kindly allowed us to use his Zoom account, and he's still here working away outside of his contract. And so in consideration of that, I talked to Gordon, and Gordon is okay with this. You can chime in if you want, Gordon. And he's asked for $200 to be paid before the end of the month for his activities this week and next week. Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Wood.
Just a comment, and it's already been said, but thanks, Gordon. I know that there's a lot of gritty work that goes in doing this, and you've been very lenient and understanding all these different moments of transition. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? And Commissioner Faulkner.
I would just echo what Chair Clem and Commissioner Wood already said, which is thanks, Gordon, for all your work and for shepherding us through this digital meeting so well.
Thank you. All right, any questions or discussion from the community? Commissioner Buckley.
Thanks. I just wanted to, as the saying goes, everything's been said, but not everybody's said it yet. I just want to associate myself with all the kind comments and support for the good work that Gordon's done. I also want to take a moment to welcome my constituent, Sean Sullivan, my neighbor down at the end of the block. It's always great to see my constituents find work. So thank you.
And I'll add my thanks as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Boots. So with that, the motion on the table is consideration for payment for Gordon for October 2022. For all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? And any abstentions? So that passes 5-0. Gordon, thank you so much for everything that you've done. If you want to say a word, that's fine. It has been a pleasure to work with you. And also, like as Commissioner Faulkner said, it's been a weird 2 years. So thank you for getting us through that.
Yeah. Amir Rani, who was the chair a few chairs ago, he came to me in 2019 before the pandemic and asked if we could do broadcasting of 1C meetings, and when we were at Mary Center, and I was glad to get the opportunity. And it's amazing what kinds of things in the neighborhood have changed since then. The whole commission has gone over, and so many different people have volunteered their time. And Sean has been trained up, and he'll get you guys going without a hiccup. And I should say also, it's been a very good opportunity to learn about Adams Morgan. And it's a neighborhood I don't live in, and don't know any other neighborhood in DC as well as Adams Morgan now. So it'll be nice to visit.
Thanks. Thank you, Gordon. And Sean Sullivan, if you wanted to say hi to everybody, and well, you know everybody, but I just wanted, if you wanted to say something, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Clem, so much, and looking forward to working with everybody on behalf of the neighborhood and all the issues that we face. So thank you all again.
Thank you for stepping up. All right, moving on to the next part of the agenda, we added a quarterly financial report. Treasurer Faulkner.
Yes, so let me just, I will just share my screen briefly.
Oh, I'm sorry, Treasurer Faulkner, I'm sorry. I see that somebody is highlighting the consideration of support for street parking solutions. That did not pass out of committee. I should have changed this agenda That was a DDOT program that is in a nascent DDOT program that does not have a full ask from the community. And so it was a presentation, not a consideration. Thank you. Moving on.
Oh, got it.
Commissioner Bob.
Thank you. So the quarterly financial report, I will just share it since I think that's easiest with talking about these financial things. So this is our quarterly financial report. As you can see, at the beginning of the quarter, we had less money. Now we have a little bit more money. Really, our only expenses this quarter were salary and the one grant we made in July. And that is really it. It's pretty straightforward. And I guess I will just mention something I just checked on since the treasurer's report, and actually we have a pending payment as of probably the last 2 hours of our allotment. So we now actually have over $11,000 will be in our bank account as soon as that payment hits. So that is some great news. But as of the end of the quarter, we had about 6,200. And yeah, if anyone has questions.
Does anybody have questions for Treasurer Faulkner? Yes, so my understanding, Treasurer, it was that was this due previously? When is the
quarter just ended? The quarter ended at the end of September. So this is for the quarter from July to September. And so it's due to OANC by November 15th or within 2 weeks of when it passes at the meeting. So.
All right. Great. Are there any other questions or just points of discussion from the commissioners? Any questions from the community? All right, with that, we will move to approve the quarterly financial report as presented by Treasurer Faulkner. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays, please say nay. Any abstentions? With that, the quarterly financial report is passed 5-0. Thank you. Treasurer Faulkner, could you please present the budget?
Yes, so this is the budget. It should pop up. Is the budget popping up?
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry, my screen, it was still showing me the quarterly report. So this is the proposed budget for this fiscal year. We have to, approve a budget at the start of every fiscal year. We were not given, the OANC did not give us very much guidance this year. They said just use the same allotment number that we were given last year. So that is what we did. We are projected to get 21,842. You'll see the fiscal year 20, it's the leftmost column compares it to last year. This year it's lower because often we don't get all our allotments within the fiscal year because things are delayed. So the proposal is pretty similar spending this year. I put a fair amount in grants, but obviously I made some notes at the bottom that, just like this year, we'll have to monitor how much money is coming in and how quickly we're getting our quarterly reports approved and reviewed by OANC in order to determine how many grants we make. A number of the things that we approved tonight would fall into the purchase of service category. So that's why that's a larger chunk of our money goes towards payment for meetings and for Zoom. And I think that's really it. If people have questions about any of the things, I've put some explanation at the bottom of sort of what the numbers are in some categories.
Commissioner Faulkner, did you talk to Commissioner Boots about the change in the grant number, or did you just come up that all by yourself?
So I think in the past, we have just what I was told when I created the budget last year by Chair Irani was that historically the idea has been that because usually when you're building a sort of like nonprofit budget, you budget out what you're expected to get that year. And what we have tended to put our excesses towards is the grant funding. And so that's sort of just what we have done in the past. I circulated to everyone. Commissioner Boots and I didn't speak directly about the grant money. I'm happy to hear if he has concerns, but that's sort of what our practice has been in the past for where we put excess funds.
Oh, I wasn't in any way suggesting that you need to talk to Commissioner Boots. I was just asking if the change in numbers came from the PSE committee.
Oh, no, it was just that was where the math added up. And so that's what we've done in the past. Last year, so the $8,000, last year we had budgeted substantially more than $8,000 originally. This is the as expended budget, not the as approved budget. So last year, I think we had said like $16,000, but because we didn't get allotments in time, we obviously didn't make that many grants.
Any questions from commissioners?
I just want to note that I don't see any issue with the grant level.
Thanks, Commissioner Boots. Commissioner Wood?
Just kind of on the note of grants, just so my understanding is correctly, which I don't think will affect how I vote on this, but as our understanding as it stands is that very soon, like in the next few weeks or something, that the grants that could be applied for kind of extraordinary circumstances because of the ongoing pandemic will no longer be applicable. Is that the case? Like our current understanding is that unless new legislation passes in 2023, the types of grants that we can grant, it becomes a more narrow scope, correct?
That's my understanding. That's what OANC had said in I think a newsletter recently about the emergency legislation. I think it's sometime November 15th or something like that. But yeah, I don't have too much more information about that. But that's
Just
what
double checking. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from commissioners? Any questions from the community? All right, so the consideration on the table is to approve the budget, the 2023 budget as the FY 2023 budget as explained by Treasurer Faulkner. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? I mean, any abstention? No, any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, that passes 5-0. The next item on the agenda is a resolution on Columbia Road Bus Priority Lane. Before we discuss that, could Commissioner Faulkner please put a link in the chat?
Yes, sorry, I believe I had put, I may have put the link earlier, and I know there were a lot of things in the chat before that. So the link is in the chat. I'm happy to start presenting if that works.
Yes, please.
So the Columbia Road Bus Priority Project is one that we got notice of from DDOT last December, that they were planning on a Columbia Road, designing something for Columbia Road. We had a presentation at the PZT committee back in March about just the needs assessment and the current state of Columbia Road. And then that was certainly not the extent of their outreach, but that was some of their outreach to the ANC. And then after all of that, talking to, doing assessments and talking to people, they designed several concepts and presented at the July Planning, Zoning, and Transportation Committee meeting, and have also done a fair amount of public outreach as well. They have a preferred concept, number one, that would have a protected bike lane along most of the corridor and bus lanes at either end of the corridor near Connecticut and near 16th Street, that really addresses a lot of the bike and pedestrian and safety issues that this ANC has passed a number of resolutions about. And the comment deadline, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, was recently extended. So we have an opportunity to have an official ANC resolution weighing in, whereas previously the deadline was October 1st. So commissioners could have, sent in their own comments. But since this ANC has, I think actually one of the first things we did early in this ANC term was pass a unanimous resolution about a bike lane, and we passed a number about pedestrian safety since. And so it seemed logical to me to weigh in on this. And I apologize that it couldn't come through committee because of the timing of when the comment deadline was extended. But I think it's important for our neighborhood and for our ANC to weigh in.
Thank you. Commissioner Wood?
I apologize if I just didn't hear this. The deadline extension that for comments, what's the date for that now?
I believe it's November 1st. So it's before our next ANC meeting.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Sorry. Commissioner Buckley.
A little slow with the buttons here. We're doing this, without 10-day notice and all that sort of thing, which, as Chair Faulkner mentioned, we're kind of being driven by other people's calendars at this point. Since I'm on PZT and we've spent a lot of time on this, I just wanted to talk briefly about what's in this resolution. Mention that, we had a very good meeting, Commissioner Wood, Commissioner Faulkner, Commissioner Falaskini, who unfortunately can't be here, had a good meeting last night with some representatives of the local bid who raised some, what we thought were, relevant and important concerns. But just to touch briefly on what we're doing in this resolution, as Chair Faulkner noted, we referenced 3 resolutions that the ANC passed previously addressing various problems, mostly involving bicycle safety in this whole corridor. And these resolutions go back to 2019. I mean, these go back to pre-pandemic days. And now that we're entering the post-pandemic era, presumably all these numbers are going to go up and these problems are going to increase. And we'll be back at square one where we were 3-4 years ago. So I think it's important that we take the opportunity to remind everybody that we've been on the record on these things for a long time. I think it's fair of me to say that the commission across the board has supported the core of this project, which is the dedicated bus lanes and the dedicated bike lanes. The issues that the bid brought before us really speak more to problems they have with what DDOT would like to do in terms of setting up various loading zones in the more commercial parts of the Columbia Strip. And I think Commissioner Falaskini sort of led the effort here because most of these are in his district. But as part of this, what we're doing, and I think we do this in the next to the last paragraph down at the bottom, we're encouraging, and let me create a little legislative history here that you can pass on to DDOT. I think it's fair to say that the ANC would like for the bid to sit down with DDOT and have DDOT listen to what the bid has to say with regard to what they would like to do with some of these loading zone slots they're trying to set up on Columbia Road. And it's just a matter of just going, address by address and having a discussion between those two parties, what would be in the best interest of preserving and expanding, commercial activity in Adams Morgan, which is certainly one of our core goals here, as an ANC and as a neighborhood. With regard to what this does, this proposal does to ANC 1C, I've got the 2 blocks that run on Columbia from 19th down to Connecticut. And those folks are on track to lose, looks like 18 parking spaces on the north side of the road. And I'm going to suggest 2 amendments here in a second. The first one is just a housekeeping thing, but then I want to address this Columbia Road issue in my district, if I could. My first little housekeeping amendment is just in the very end of the resolution. just strike the end of that last sentence where you say, along with significantly expanded loading accommodations. I don't think at this point, we don't want to suggest we think it's better that they do loading zones versus parking spaces, while at the same time we're encouraging the BID and DDOT to sit down and figure out what works best along Columbia Road in that regard. So if I could, just let me offer a friendly amendment to strike those last 6 words in the last paragraph, if that's agreeable to folks.
Yeah, Commissioner Balaki, I have a point of order, please.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Did this come out of committee? Commissioner Faulkner, did this come out of committee?
So it did not come out of committee, as I mentioned. I think my understanding has been that the ANC can consider things that didn't go out of committee if it's in the interest of the community, or if it would be detrimental to the community to not consider it. And so that's my understanding, that we are able to do that, and that because of the comment deadlines, that's why we are doing that. We've done that before.
Absolutely. I know. Yes, I know when we do those things. I was asking because I didn't realize that there was a deadline. The reason why we're doing this without a PZT committee meeting is because there is a comment deadline.
Yes, exactly.
Kristen just said.
Yeah, it's November 1st, but November 1st is before our next full commission meeting. And that, yes, sorry, that is the comment deadline is why, and the deadline, I believe, was, I think I had heard that it might be extended, but the day of the PZT committee, and then after it was when it was actually extended. And so we didn't have a chance to consider it at committee before the deadline was moved.
I see. Right. I mean, just as a point of information, the reason why we hold things in committee is so that the neighborhood can have notice and chime in. But absolutely, I mean, if there's a deadline, there's a deadline. I just didn't pick that up initially.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Balaki, you want to continue with your amendment?
Yes, I think I have a hopefully friendly amendment on the floor if the author of the resolution would be willing to accept it.
Yes, yeah, I'd be happy to change that. I think I only included that as a note of describing the current situation. Yeah. But yes, I'm happy to modify that.
Right.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
No, I'm sorry, Commissioner Balaki. I'm just reading the chats while you are providing friendlies, and I hear what Kristen Barden's doing, and I recognize it and I agree with it. I have a point of information for Commissioner Faulkner. It doesn't seem to me like I'm not disregarding the community input. I'm saying that the question is, this really almost is like reaffirming other resolutions and DDOT requests that ANC 1C has done in the past. Am I mistaken on that?
Not at all. And I guess I would just say that there was extensive discussion at the July PZT committee about the proposals, and certainly I think Commissioner Balaki and Falskini and I took into account the public feedback we heard at that, and I will say part of the reason we weren't necessarily going to consider a resolution at the same meeting we were hearing the concept, and then we didn't have August meetings, as people may remember, and so the timing of getting and then the comment deadline changed, and so I think, but yeah, I think this is really reaffirming a lot of what we have done. We've passed unanimous resolutions about this issue repeatedly, as you mentioned. Yes.
Yeah. May I reclaim my time?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Balaki. Thanks.
No, I appreciate. I do. I was going to offer my other thing, but let me echo what was just said here, because I tried to make that point at the beginning. It's unfortunate that we're following somebody else's schedule, but life is what it is, and we've had very good conversations, as I mentioned, with the BID, and I'm sure all of us have had conversations with other constituents here and there as this thing is developed. I know my folks on Columbia Road who are going to lose their parking places have been letting me know their thoughts since February, and I've encouraged them to be a part of the process and to attend our meetings and participate and so forth. But to get back to their issue, what I would like to do, and I hope this would be considered friendly as well. I haven't had a chance to type it in, and I'll do that afterwards on the original document. But at the end of the second to last paragraph, where we talk about modifying the preferred concept as little as possible, after the semicolon, add ANC 1C also urges DDOT to designate all remaining street parking between 19th Street to Connecticut Avenue on Columbia Road as residential parking only. The effect of this would be to take, we've got 18 spots on the south side of Columbia that are currently residential or a 2-hour visitor. And then you go a little farther up towards 19th, we've already got 5 that are residential only. What I'm trying to do here is, mitigate the angst a little bit of the folks who are going to lose half their parking places on Columbia by giving them a little better shot at getting the spots that are left on the south side of the street. So if I'd be happy to discuss this, or if folks are willing to accept, I'd be most grateful. I'm sorry, let me see what Kristen's saying.
So Commissioner Bollicky, could you either repeat that or type it into the chat or something so that we can use it as a point of discussion?
Yeah, it's hard for me to type into the chat on this iPhone. I think I can type
that's
it
fine. That's fine. I just wanted to
up here. I'll see what I can do here.
No, it's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if Commissioner Faulkner could get all of that. Commissioner Faulkner, can you get all that?
I got the gist, but not all the exact wording. But I can try to type it, or if Commissioner Bollicky, I can start to respond while Commissioner Bollicky talks, if that's at all helpful.
You want me to type, or I mean, let me just repeat it. That might be easier for everybody who's listening. ANC 1C also urges DDOT to designate all remaining street parking between 19th Street to Connecticut Avenue on Columbia Road as residential parking only, period. That would have the practical effect of changing 18 spots on the south side of Columbia from residential or 2-hour visitor to just straight residential.
Commissioner Bollicky, in a situation like that, when we are asking a specific or we're outlining a specific, or designating parts of the street for parking, does that discount the bus stop? Or you see what I'm saying? I mean, like that, do we need to clarify that there's a bus stop there, or do we just say because the parking is parking, we'll just keep it that way, is sort of what you're outlining?
I see Chair Faulkner has typed it in, and that's what I wanted to say. And if you look at the little chart on page 21 of the presentation we got in July, I think it was, does indicate that there are existing and future bus zones totally separate from this parking spaces I'm talking about. So it should be self-evident.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fine. I just didn't know. I mean, I just
not my intent whatsoever to meddle at all with, any other designations on Columbia at all. Right. I'm just talking.
All right. So Commissioner Bollicky, you suggested 2 amendments. Do you have any other points of discussion or questions for? Okay, Commissioner Faulkner.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so Commissioner Faulkner, do you accept those amendments as friendly?
Yeah, I'm happy to accept. Commissioner Bollicky had mentioned the parking issue to me, but it was late yesterday and I hadn't had a chance to formulate words, but I think that makes sense to me, especially, I'm not sure if Commissioner Bollicky said it, but those spots are currently resident and 2-hour parking, and this would just change them so there's not the 2-hour parking, and that, especially that section of Columbia, which is, very residential in that area. That makes sense to me.
Yes, I think that that 2-hour parking surprisingly enough is probably actually from the Hilton. So yes. But it could also be zoned for zone 1 only, not just residential, but it could actually be zoned for zone 1 only, not just zone 1 2 hours. All right. So are there any other points of discussion or questions from commissioners. Commissioner Wood.
Thanks. So just one other thing. I mean, I've talked to some constituents about this issue, and I know that some of others of us have as well, which is, I mean, the general core of it, we're conveying that not only do we support this in this moment or to vote upon that support, but also establishing precedent. But the one thing that I do think that is worth noting is that it's a pretty drastic drop in what would be paid for parking spots compared to the reduction in others. So I would like to propose an amendment, a friendly amendment, which would just modify the first resolved clause, which says, so maybe I should choose my words differently, but it says the ANC 1C strongly urges DDOT to modify the concept as little as possible. I propose adding a clause to that sentence that would say, with the exception of, we recommend establish, maybe something vaguely worded, because I think it's an ongoing discussion that deserves some time, notwithstanding the tentative November 1st deadline, but that we, not with the exception of, maybe help me out if this wording doesn't make sense, but trying to establish a bit more parity between the reduction of spots for paid for park and commercial loading zones. Commercial loading zones does not drop as much as the pay for park, which would really affect a lot of the businesses that are on the corridor, and they're, I think, frankly, very scared of that. So at least to have it open that with that, if there were to be any adjustments, I think that's something that's worth discussion, just because the change really is drastic. And I mean, Columbia goes right through my S&D, and I try to stay pretty on top of what the business owner, as well as their staff, a lot of the staff I've known have either had the option of driving their own car, or they've had to pay very expensive Ubers because they can't afford to live nearby where they work. So as much as I would like to have a carless society, I think that in the meantime, we need to account for what people are dealing with. And I think that that would be something that should at least account or open that door, so that's part of the conversation, if such a conversation can continue.
So what is your friendly amendment, please, Commissioner Wood?
Yeah, that was a lot of words to just suggest to the first clause, saying after, to modify the concept as little as possible, with the exception of supporting the consideration of more, maybe some more balance between the suggested decline of pay for park spots in relation to commercial loading zones. If there's any suggestions to make that sound less forced, please raise them.
Okay, is that in, does that then conflict with Commissioner Bollicky's friendly amendment about making the south side between 19th and Connecticut residential only?
It's a good question. I don't believe so, but Commissioner Bollicky, can you come on?
I had my hand up. I was going to offer a friendly amendment to your friendly amendment. I think Chair Clem's point could be addressed if we refer specifically to paid parking for commercial purposes or something like that, because we really don't, you know, the chair mentioned the Hilton. There's really not any sort of commercial activity on my stretch of Columbia. It's just, they're just meters. But anyway, I wanted to also, as you do this, throw in a reference, and we discussed this in the meeting with BID yesterday, the possibility of looking at expanding paid parking on nearby side streets. I mean, not endorsing it across the board, but encouraging DDOT to look at that issue as we look at this whole basket of reallocating where everybody's going to park. I think, you know, the BID is interested in doing that, and I think that's sort of a potentially helpful safety valve on this whole issue.
And just to kind of
I'm not
respond to
quite
that,
trying to put that in words, but just add a phrase, including consideration of expanding paid parking options on nearby side streets.
I
yield back.
Hold on a second, Commissioner Bollicky. You're making another suggestion for another friendly amendment.
I'm trying to make friendly to Commissioner Wood's friendly.
he's changing what I suggested, just modifying what my wording.
I'm trying to add a phrase to it. Now, I'm not sure exactly where you put it, but that's what I'm trying to do.
So are we trying to, just a point of information, are we trying to be more considerate to the commercial zone area on Connecticut, on Columbia Road? Or are we trying to be more considerate of the residents of Adams Morgan who live on Columbia Road?
Well, at least because I'm the one proposing it, my intention was to have it, because the number of spots, that's the three main categories I saw that TDOT had put in their graphics that they presented, which is residential spots, pay for park, and commercial loading zone. So they're all dropping, but in different proportions. And this is not a good graphic, I'll put my hand on it. But I just think that's some sort of kind of semi-vaguely worded phrase to suggest that putting residential aside for that particular clause, and just instead of basically almost completely getting rid of all the pay for park spots which customers can use during the week, to make it so that there is open for consideration for not going that drastic and having that be compensated by getting rid of a little bit more commercial loading zone space. But because we don't have the time to get into the details of the traffic engineering, and for the sake of time, so we can try to pass something if there's the votes, not getting too specific with the terminology.
If my colleague would yield for just a second, the side street issue, I mean, yes, people who reside on these side streets, I expect are going to push back, particularly the ones who went through the very complicated and tedious process of getting those things in place in the first place. But I do think it's a relevant issue that needs to be considered. And that's why I'm saying, let's add it to the mix and leave it to the politicians and the staff folks down at DDOT to sort all this out. But what we're saying is, yeah, it's a legitimate issue and it ought to be looked at. You back. Thank you.
Okay. I guess what I'm hearing are more specifics, and Commissioner, okay, go ahead, Commissioner Boots.
I might be just saying what you're about to say, but I feel like we're getting a little bit too granular, and that, I think we might be covered by the recommendation that we just added about having DDOT in the bid talk about these issues, and that's probably the best way that we can approach it. I do think, just because also we didn't have notice and things like that, is if we can stick closer to like what we've passed previously, I feel a little bit more comfortable about. And I do think these are all very legitimate issues, but I think, I just don't think that we have enough information right now to stray too far away from what we've already kind of passed previously.
Thank you, Commissioner. I agree with you, and that's pretty much what I was going to say. I was going to try to suggest, since we're getting into granular issues, they're like laying out specifics. I think that making it simple, like just simplifying everything. We accept the concept we want, and that's sort of where my question was: are people more inclined to prioritize residents or prioritize meters or prioritize loading zones? Obviously not all in the same block or all at this, but I mean, we need loading zones maybe closer, down Columbia, and we need residential closer to Connecticut. But if it can be more generalized and less granular, I think that it would be an easier resolution to pass for me. And then, as we know, DDOT will come back to us. DDOT will come back to the ANC. DDOT will also put out an NOI. DDOT will also put out a design plan. Along the way, there will be a number of times where the ANC and community members are going to be able to comment more. So I would like to make a suggestion of going back to a more simple resolved clause, something like strongly urges DDOT to modify the concept as little as possible and make considerations for residents from 19th to the, I mean, if you want me to lay it out, I will try to lay it out, but that would be that. And then it can be a point of discussion, because I do not actually have a friendly amendment crafted. Okay, Commissioner Faulkner.
Yeah, that all points well taken, and that all makes sense to me. I was finding myself, with all the suggested friendly amendments, finding myself a bit overwhelmed with how to incorporate all of it. I guess I'm happy to maybe take out that resolved clause about street parking and maybe add a clause just saying consideration of residents. I also, as Chair Clem rightfully pointed out, DDOT will have they will be back before the ANC in a few months with the 30% plan of design where we'll see actually what things will look like. This is really just the concept. We also could, at PZT this month, consider a resolution about both getting specific about the street parking between 19th and Connecticut, and also, you know, if we wanted to talk about the bids request about looking into meter, you know, swapping some spots out for metered, we could consider that. It obviously, the full ANC wouldn't be able to consider it by the end of the comment period, but because it will still be soon after, you know, presumably a lot of those things are still being worked out. It's really that DDOT needs to have, you know, what exact concept they're designing for decided.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Faulkner. I agree. I also think that that is an excellent, it's an excellent option for this discussion, because if we go back to a simpler resolution, and then you, PZT, has a neighborhood committee meeting that can bring the neighborhood together, and then talk about very specific things, and that can come out of the committee meeting. This is a great month for it, because if we get into November, then we're sort of close to Thanksgiving, and then of course December. So this might be a great month for a discussion like that. And then the ANC can come back and be very specific on concepts that the neighborhood has given us input on. And that can be on the record going forward. So that being said, to Commissioner Buckley and Commissioner Wood, would you consider allowing us to use your friendlies for a future resolution, and go back to the original resolution, simplifying this? So essentially what we're doing is we are reconfirming ANC's support for the Columbia Road bus lanes and the design option number 1. Commissioner Buckley and Commissioner Wood, what do you think of that, Commissioner Buckley?
If this is a commitment to put these issues on the PZT calendar for, you know, this month's meeting, I'm happy to withdraw my, leaving the discussion with the Commissioner Wood aside for just a second. I'm happy to withdraw my language, which you've just highlighted on street parking from 19th to Connecticut on Columbia. And if we, you know, we'll discuss it here in a couple of weeks. I assume my first little technical amendment's okay.
Commissioner Wood? Oh, sorry, Commissioner Buckley, is that okay?
Yeah.
Commissioner Wood?
Thank you. And on a similar vein, yeah, I think it was pretty, the process of us doing this out loud, I think was helpful, at least for me, to realize that we should probably make sure that we step back. But I do think it's important before that deadline of November 1st, or this tentative deadline for commenting, that we do, I wanted to raise them on the public forum, just to know that they're out there in case that this meeting would be referenced in future decision-making by DDOT, in the event that, you know, we don't have another opportunity, which was kind of the understanding, because I think ideally we would have a bit more time, if not just a couple weeks, another month, to make sure that we can flesh out some of that. So I'm very happy to withdraw my friendly amendment in favor of something that is more of a, don't quote me too directly, but, you know, clause that says, hey, listen, we think this is good overall, but there are some fine points that we think should be discussed. Let's do that. So I'm in favor of something like that. So I'll withdraw my amendment, which I think would by default withdraw your amendment to my amendment. Is that correct, Commissioner Buckley?
Yes, well, Commissioner, well, there were two things, because Commissioner Buckley gave a friendly amendment to your friendly amendment, but he also did a friendly amendment on his own about 19th Street. So thank you for those discussion points. The resolution is still on the table, okay? And I understand the timing of this. I do believe that, to Commissioner Faulkner's point, this consideration is several things. One, it's under deadline, so the ANC should chime in on some portion of it. And essentially what we're doing is we're reinforcing our letters that we've sent in the past, and we're saying that the concept is okay, and we approve, or we suggest concept number 1. Do I get that correct, Commissioner Faulkner?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So with that in mind, and with the postponing of detailed discussion for PZT October 2022, are there any other questions about this resolution as proposed for the Columbia Road? There's some discussion on the chat, but that is not directly related to this. That's fine. Are there any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Wood.
If I'm not mistaken, which I might be, wasn't there a friendly on your half, Chair Clem, to add, kind of consolidate what we're discussing in a finer point that would be in addition to the resolution, or am I misremembering?
Commissioner Wood, the what I was saying was, let's get rid of all of the friendlies that are more detailed, and just, so if there was, I did not make a friendly, but my suggestion, or I didn't make a friendly amendment, I made a friendly suggestion. Mm-hmm. The suggestion is to consider only the resolution as proposed by Commissioner Faulkner at the beginning of this discussion. No amendments to this. So essentially, there could be a friendly. I could propose to take the first resolve and the second resolve, and just essentially say, strongly urge the DDOT to modify the concept as little as possible, and we strongly support concept number 1. But essentially, we're saying the same thing, and we're taking out all of the details that can be then dealt with in a longer committee meeting with notice to the community and more input from our neighbors. And we can collect, PZT can collect, ANC can collect information and details from the neighbors that can then be in another resolution or letter to DDOT that could be on file when, say, the designs are made public. Or whatever the next phase is. I guess the designs are made public, but the next phase of this planning phase.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. And just for my clarification, just so this is asking for repetition, I think, but like that's based on the understanding that although there's a November 1st deadline for DDOT's comments incoming on this particular project, we presume that there's still opportunity in the future for us to be given great weight on this issue, even though that deadline has passed. Is that correct?
There will be. I mean, whenever something happens, if nothing else, there will be an NOI where the ANC can chime in, where the neighbors can chime in, where anybody in DC can discuss, can make their opinion known on the NOI. So that's why I was suggesting going back to the original resolution as Commissioner Faulkner proposed to add on, and this gives, and then the reason goes back to Commissioner Faulkner saying that the deadline is November 1st. So let's get a letter on record. Details can be used later for the ANC to pass a letter and use it with commenting as the design and plans get down the road.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. I just brought that up because I do know the bid. I mean, one representative's here, but from our conversations, they sort of saw November 1st as this do or die date. And I just wanted to make sure it's clear that there's a bit more leniency. So thanks for putting that out there.
Yes, well, I'm not going to say, Commissioner Wood, that I am that I have any understanding or any understanding in the machinations of DDOT. Okay, but
none of us do.
I do know that we will have opportunities in the future, and I think that this letter as stands, I guess we will vote on it, but the letter as it stands is simply a reiteration of our previous support, as well as saying that we want concept 1 and that we want it modified as little as possible. The details, I think the details can lead us down a road without neighborhood input. That might not be helpful, right? I'm not a traffic engineer, so that's all. Commissioner Faulkner, do you have do you have any other points to raise?
I think I think my only other point was just that certainly Commissioner Buckley, I think I gave you a thumbs up, but definitely we can add this to the agenda for October's PZT meeting. And also, community people can submit feedback to DDOT as well. So I would just say that, if we discuss something there, we obviously can't pass anything till our November meeting, but neighbors could get together to send a letter to DDOT about those spots on the south side of Columbia. Similarly, and again, as Commissioner Wood clarified and Chair Clem said, the November 1st date is the date for feedback on the concept, but the design, my understanding of the process is that DDOT will come back to the ANC in early 2023. And obviously we can give them feedback up through then about specific things that have had more time to get public input, that we can discuss with the bid and, metered parking and side streets and all of that when there's been more time for that. I doubt that DDOT is making the decision about this at midnight, the day that the comments are due, and that things that are tweaking it will still be, or offering feedback will still be able to be incorporated into the process of the actual design.
Thank you, Commissioner Faulkner. Commissioner Buckley.
Thanks. Just a quick point of information. I want to go back to the very first friendly amendment I offered, which just knocked off the last 6 words of the last resolve paragraph. As I see the document in front of me now, that change is still part of what we're going to vote on. In other words, those 6 words have been removed, which shouldn't be controversial. It really is just a technical change. Just so everybody, if people are keeping score out there of what we're actually doing here, those 6 words are no longer in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Buckley. And Commissioner Faulkner, you are still allowing that first of Commissioner Buckley's friendly amendments. Okay, that's great. Any other questions or points of discussion by commissioners? Any questions? There are many questions in the chat, but there's also chat in the chat. Are there any questions from community members? Okay, so with that, the motion on the floor is to pass the resolution on proposed Columbia Road bus priority lane concepts. Again, to reiterate, we're doing this because there is a deadline on November 1st. We would like to send in information from the ANC on our stance on the Columbia Road bus priority lanes. With no more discussion, all those in favor of passing this resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays, please say nay. Any abstentions? All right, so with that, the resolution passes 5-0. And that brings us to the end of our agenda for October 5th. Before I say goodnight, I want to reiterate my thanks to Gordon Chapin and best of luck to you, and welcome to Sean Sullivan. Thank you.